Kabuki, like all ancient drama, Greek, Roman, Chinese, intends to tell its story with impersonation, exaggerated masks that readily identify and separate good from bad, joy from sorrow. The face becomes the embodiment of the man, with no shades or degrees of likeness between the two, the difference readily discernible by the audience from the moment they step on stage. Historically, the ancient Greek masks of comedy and tragedy, one smiling, the other grimacing, reflect an imaginary life suspended between tears and laughter, which in the eyes of the dramatist or the role of the actor often are the ultimate reward in the search for happiness. You laugh or cry. It's as simple as that. The mask projects the part as it projects the voice. The skilled hands of a makeup artist can draw the deep lines of age or sorrow into the facial mask of a tragedian. A circus clown can put on a false nose, a few pieces of putty, and make himself comical, but far from being simply a prop in the theater or circus, television, or the motion pictures. The mask has become as much a fixture in modern civilization as it was in primitive society. Masks are worn for protection. Masks are worn for amusement. Halloween and Mardi Gras false faces continue the tradition of mummers who performed pantomimes in masks from house to house at Christmas time back in early England. Most Americans, of course, need no costume. They wear the natural mask of the world in all its shapes, sizes, and colors. Hiding behind synthetic emotions and artificial appearances, they act out roles the world expects of them, while inwardly they're torn between the tragedy and the comedy of modern life, between tears and laughter.
Between Tears and Laughter, another program in the continuing series titled The Search for Happiness, on this, a Herald of Truth, featuring the well-known author, college educator, and minister Batsell Baxter, chairman of the Department of Bible, David Lipscomb College, Nashville, Tennessee, and minister of the Hillsboro Church of Christ in Nashville.
Throughout the thousands of years that human beings have been on earth, a mask, whether it was for protection, for disguise, for an imaginative flight into fancy, has held a curious universal fascination for men. Now, besides practical protective masks, we often think of the masks these days simply as false faces worn by children at Halloween, or disguises worn by adults at Mardi Gras celebrations or costume balls. Now, the modern housewife might see little relation between a social masquerade party and these primitive masks used for ceremonial rites. But what is the difference? Is it that we consider one civilized and the other primitive? One is good-natured fun, while the other is worn out of ignorance and fear? What about the common, everyday masks of civilized society? Are they really so different after all? Today's masks are certainly more subtle than those of the past. Today's mask is more likely to be a facial expression that disguises our true inner feelings, or an attitude that we assume as a shield against criticism or reality, or the front that we put up to impress others with, keeping up with the Joneses. What men of all ages have in common And what is symbolized in all ages by an infinite variety of masks is a gulf between what we are and do and what we would like to be and do. Oh, there's a little of the actor in all of us, a little of the spirit that life would be unutterably a bore if we could not live in the realm of imagination as well as the life of time and space. We've all entered the secret life of Walter Mitty sometime or another, seeing ourselves not as others see us, but as we see ourselves, one of nature's noblemen, and certainly bigger than life. The Greeks had a word for the actor, hypokritos, hypocrite. Today, the hypocrite is not the professional actor, but the amateur, one whose gap between pretense and reality is wide enough to drive trucks through. The Roman philosopher Seneca described such a man: at home, he's a savage; abroad, a saint. Often, though, you'll see him in a different role, wearing a different mask. He's the hypocrite in reverse, whom Oscar Wilde described as a person pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. It is a familiar mask for a person who succumbs to the pressures of society and behaves in ways his own values would not permit if he were left alone. The revivalist Billy Sunday once said that character is what a man is when alone and in the dark. The hypocrite in reverse reminds us that character is also what a man is when under pressure to lower his standards. The Kinsey report on sexual behavior shocked the public when it appeared in the 1950s. But further research has proved that what a person may boast about and what a person actually does are often two entirely different things. It appears that Americans, far from being the libertines they claim to be, actually wear the mask of hypocrisy in reverse. Philosophers pinpoint one of the marks of a civilized culture as the ability to defer rewards, to bypass the cheaper, more easily attainable rewards of the present for the much greater and much more precious rewards of the future. The ability to defer rewards separates the society that sends its young out to fend for themselves from the culture that educates its young in the values and skills it prizes most highly. Within any civilization, there are those who spend recklessly for immediate gratification, in contrast to those who sacrifice and save. The loud heroic convention time often hides deep disillusionment with a political process that requires a man to support unworthy causes. A magnanimous gift of a memorial building or a monument may be a shield protecting a sense of guilt for shirking the fight against society's ills or man's injustices. But there's a kind of mask that is more pitiable and more ironic than all the others, for it's the mask worn by the religious person. The disguise that haunts the churchgoer, whether for protection or for hiding, has a quality all its own. One particularly tragic mask is the one that attempts to hide a person's doubts and fears about his own faith. The pious smile is one, or possibly it's the over-earnest frown, or any number of poses that would substitute busy work for compassion, or trivial arguments for meditation on eternal matters of the soul. These masks are always there to tempt the churchgoer. Insistence on his own righteousness, eagerness to gain the respect of neighbors, a calculated display of devotion, all these may disguise a ferocious pride that closes out any of the lasting benefits that religion can offer, an escape mechanism from the responsibilities that go with the privileges. The reason that religious masks are so ironic is that they're so unnecessary. Religion in its purest writings, none of the 19th century atheistic philosophers, none of the 20th century naturalistic advocates, none can compare with the penetrating, revealing thrust that the church doors mask in these words of Jesus from the Gospel according to Matthew. He wrote, "Take heed that ye do not your righteousness before men to be seen of them, else ye have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. When therefore thou doest alms, sound not a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have received their reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father who seeth in secret shall recompense thee." Then spake Jesus to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. All things therefore, whatsoever they bid you, these do and observe, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. Yea, they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with their finger. They love the chief place at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and the salutations in marketplaces, and to be called of men Rabbi. But be not ye called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, and ye are brethren. And call no man your father on the earth, for one is your Father, even he who is in heaven. Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even the Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be humbled, and whosoever shall humble himself shall be exalted. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye tithe mint and anise and cumin, and have left undone the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. But these ye ought to have done, and not to have left the other undone. Ye blind guides that strain out the gnat and swallow the camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye cleanse the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they're full of extortion and excess. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup and of the platter, that the outside thereof may become clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you're like unto whited sepulchres, which outwardly appear beautiful, but inwardly are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but inwardly you're full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the sepulchres of the prophets and garnish the tombs of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we should not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that killeth the prophets and stoneth them that are sent unto her, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. These are the harshest words spoken by Jesus that are recorded in the New Testament. Why does he single out the teachers of the law, the religious leaders of the day, for this devastating scorn? Instead, why not attack, as we might, the extortioners, the corrupt officials, the common criminals? Well, the answer to this question offers you a glimpse into the very heart of the religion of Jesus. He came, the Bible says, to seek and to save the lost, to forgive sin, to restore man to a harmonious relationship to God and to other men and to himself. The religious people of his time seemed to think that their token exercises were sufficient. What need of forgiveness? Blinded to the great gulf that separated their lives from the absolute divine standards of justice and righteousness, they stood as hypocrites and impostors before Jesus. Just as men do today, self-satisfied, self-deceived. In the extraordinary complex religious scene today, we observe a variety of patterns of behavior. We can see people in the church whose lives fall short of their ideals, yet who do not avail themselves of the privilege of confessing their sins to God to receive forgiveness and a new start. But we can also see all around us some men outside of the church who scoff at church members who are trying to do their best. Outsiders who apparently believe that they can look into the soul of a church member and determine his sincerity. Well, the church can do without the critiques of those who are not willing to bear their own crosses or help bear the burdens of others. Most startling of all the versions of religious hypocrisy is the one so tempting to those who decide that they must leave the church because they can no longer endure the false or weak beliefs of church members. This despair over the state of everyone's soul but one's own can even affect church leaders. Because Jesus' words about hypocrites touch so deeply, we must beware of seeing how aptly they apply to others. We must hear these words as though they were addressed to us personally. Otherwise, they can become just another way of confirming some imagined superiority of our own. Then, in effect, our prayer would be, Lord, I thank Thee that I'm not as these hypocrites. And this is the greatest hypocrisy of all. As long as a person is content to wear the many masks that hide and protect him from his own failures, that person's not ready to understand or to receive the great gift of salvation, of life in all its fullness.
Go.